Welcome to the Kino Cave, and today I'm going to be talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. So this movie is turning 20 years old this year, and so I think with an extremely famous movie that's 20 years old, I don't really need to do non-spoiler, spoiler stuff. Most people I think watching this video are probably going to know the plot of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, so I'm just going to say straight off, full spoilers for the Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. So I absolutely loved the Pirates of the Caribbean movies when I was a kid. I would watch them endlessly. I remember specifically watching Dead Man's Chest a lot when I was a kid. That was definitely my favorite one, I think. It's just the perfect mix of action and comedy and drama and romance and everything you would love out of a modern day adventure movie. And to this day, Dead Man's Chest is still my favorite. The comments are coming at me. I know that for most people, Curse of the Black Pearl is their favorite. I know that a lot of people, including people that I know in real life, think that Curse of the Black Pearl is the only actually good Pirates movie. I think that the Gore Verbinski Pirates movies are all really great. They are the best modern day adventure movies. They are the Indiana Jones of the 2000s. So, yeah, the first three Gore Verbinski movies are just absolutely fantastic. It's a perfect trilogy for me. But today, I'm focusing in on Curse of the Black Pearl. One thing that I remember from watching these movies when I was a kid is how much I wanted to be like Jack Sparrow. I wanted to be this charismatic and kind of sweet talking guy who could kind of talk his way out of any situation, and he's kind of a badass and kind of a silly kind of badass as well, and I just found that really endearing. I always wanted to be just like that, and still do to an extent. I've not figured it out yet. So focusing on this movie, I'm kind of just gonna go through the plot and give you my thoughts on kind of the key moments that I really like. So, we open the first movie on the series' main character, Elizabeth Swann. Yes, I consider Elizabeth Swann to be the main character of the first three Pirates movies, the only good Pirates movies, in my opinion. Because when you look at her journey throughout all three films, I think it's pretty obvious that she's the main character. I know Jack's the most popular, and I know most people would consider Jack to be the main character. He's the one on all the posters. He's Johnny fucking Depp. So he always gets center stage, and it's the performance of a lifetime for Johnny. But I do still think that the main emotional core of this film, and the second and third film as well, is Elizabeth Swann and Will Turner. So in this opening scene, she meets the other main character of the first three films, Will Turner. Again, Will and Elizabeth are the ones who have their emotional journeys throughout the first three films. So I consider them to be the main characters of these films, and Jack to just be the larger-than-life, kind of more comical sort of character. One thing that's just really genius about this film, I think, that you see in the first kind of 20 minutes, half hour, is the contrast of our two main characters, Elizabeth and Will. Because Elizabeth is the daughter of a governor. She's come from this kind of upper class kind of a family, and she has certain societal expectations for her. She's set to marry Commodore, which I only just realized on this rewatch of the movie. Norrington was like an adult when Elizabeth was like 8 years old. And then when they flash forward to the present day, she is set to marry Norrington, who has to be like at least 10 years older than her. Does anyone else find that really weird? Anyway, back to my point. Elizabeth is the daughter of a governor. She's expected to be this example for great women in the society of the time, but she isn't. She is enamored with pirates. She loves the idea of a pirate being free to do and take whatever she wants, and she's just always fascinated with them. And I think she's largely fascinated with the freedom that they have, because Elizabeth has very little freedom, as you see in the opening few scenes when she comes in as Keira Knightley and she's literally being strapped into this corset that's literally suffocating her. Metaphorically as well, the societal expectations are suffocating her. And she's expected to look a certain way and act a certain way. You see later on when she's among other women and they're all doing the exact same thing. They're all wearing very similar clothes. They're all fanning themselves with their fans. But Elizabeth is the only one who genuinely looks really uncomfortable in this situation. Because she isn't. She's comfortable just being herself as a pirate-like person. Someone who has the freedom to do what she wants. On the other side of that coin, we have Will Turner, who is the son of a pirate, although he doesn't know it. And he has this background of being someone who can be free to pillage and plunder and do whatever he feels. But he doesn't want to be. He wants to be that more middle to upper class kind of person. Pure, straight and narrow. He practices with a sword 3 hours a day because he wants to be able to kill a pirate as soon as he meets one. He wants to be this paragon of goodness, and he just hates pirates with a burning passion, despite his origins being in a pirate family. So I know I've just rambled for like 5 or 10 minutes on the main characters, in my opinion, but easily the standout character in the whole Pirates franchise, the one that's on all the posters, the one who gets all the great scenes, the one who has all the great quotes, the one that everyone loves, Captain Jack Sparrow. I know a lot of people have said this already, but I will echo that here. Captain Jack Sparrow's introduction into this film and this franchise, I think it is the greatest character introduction in the history of cinema. It is unfucking believable how perfect this introduction to a character is. We have Captain Jack standing, it's here behind me, he is standing proud on top of his boat, staring out over the horizon. This triumphant, uplifting music is playing. He's looking like such a badass, heroic figure, and then he drops down and you see that his boat, which is not huge, is filling with water. And without a word spoken, and in about 5 or 10 seconds, you get exactly the type of person Jack Sparrow is. He is a sinking ship, but a very heroic and very triumphant sinking ship. Beyond that, because this character introduction is far from over, Jack then arrives at his destination. Again, the music swells, it's really triumphant, and he's there, and you just see that the boat is sinking and sinking and sinking, and then at the very last minute, he steps off onto the dock. Again, you know exactly who Jack is upon seeing this opening. He's a sinking ship, and just as he's about to fall to the depths and die, he steps off with grace and in a sense of heroism about him. And I can't remember who said it. It was someone on YouTube who said that the music that's playing during Jack Sparrow's introduction is the music that's playing in his head as he's ship is sinking and as he steps out onto the dock. And I have to agree with that, whoever said that. I can't remember who it was now. But yeah, this is an absolutely incredible character introduction, and I get chills every time I see it. Following that, we get an absolutely hilarious scene between Jack and the two guards. And what this scene manages to do, again, this is the genius of these films, is that we are introduced to Jack Sparrow finally speaking, and you get to see more of his personality. And we were also given a little exposition on the Black Pearl, which is the part of the title of the movie. It's sort of like a MacGuffin, especially for Jack, because his kind of main goal is to get the Black Pearl. And this scene does so much because, for one thing, it's absolutely hilarious. Like, there's so much great comedy between Jack and the two guards. I can't remember who they are or the actors who play them right now, but they are absolutely hilarious in this scene. And we also get the mystery of the Black Pearl, the air of mystique around it. This ship with black sails that is faster than any ship, and it leaves only destruction in its wake. And there's just so much great comedy, but also it sets up so much of this surprisingly dense story in this one tiny little scene. Following this, Elizabeth is finally completely suffocated by her corset and, metaphorically, the expectations put on her, especially to accept Norrington's, again, in retrospect, really weird proposal to marry her, because, again, he's gotta be, like, way older than her, considering that opening scene when she's a kid. Anyway, so she passes out, falls into the ocean, and again, something that I find quite interesting is that Norrington kind of considers going after her, but then the guards are like, no, there's rocks down there. It's amazing that she isn't dead right now and that she didn't hit them. Why would you do that? But then Jack sees her fall. He doesn't even know who she is, but Jack immediately is just like, no one else gonna save her? Alright. Jumps into the water, rescues her, rips off that corset, and again, it's really interesting to me that, for one thing, in Jack's heart, he is kind of a good person. Like, he'll pillage and plunder, and he might, sleep with women and not call them afterwards, whatever the 18th century equivalent of that was, but Jack will kind of do all these horrible things, but he will save someone if he believes that they're worth saving. And contrasting that with Norrington, who doesn't, because he doesn't want to risk his own safety. It's really interesting to me that Norrington, he's like the avatar for the kind of high society and what's expected of Elizabeth. And at the end of the day, he won't save her, but a pirate will. The pirate's life will save Elizabeth from her horrible future with Norrington. And of course then Jack Sparrow gets captured by Norrington. They've got guns pointed at him and everything, and we get the start of the correction of Captain Jack Sparrow, which is such a great little thing as well, because Jack has so much pride and so much confidence in himself that he will correct you if you don't address him by his proper title, even when you just saw his boat sink into the sea floor, never to be seen again. He is a captain without a ship, but a captain nonetheless. And of course, there's an endless amount of memorable quotes, especially in the first three Pirates movies, I feel, such as, you have to be without a doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of, but you have heard of me. Following on from that, as Jack escapes and enters into the blacksmith's house, where Will is kind of moping a little bit because he's not really being appreciated for his work. The blacksmith who's getting all the credit for making all these beautiful swords, he's asleep drunk, and, it's very obvious from Will's reaction that he spends most of the day asleep and drunk, while Will is making these absolutely beautiful swords. Following that then, we get our first scene with Jack Sparrow and Will Turner, and I absolutely love the relationship that these characters have throughout the first three films, and especially in this film, as Jack helps Will to realize who he really is at his core. No matter how much Will tries to run away from the life of a pirate, it'll always kind of catch up with him, and in his heart he will always kind of be this daring pirate that will go against what people expect of him and want from him. What I love about this following scene, the sword fight between Jack and Will, what I love about all of that is that you're not just getting great action, which you are. There's some great action, there's great use of the environment. It's not just the great choreography of Jack and Will fighting with the swords. They're using the environment, they're kind of walking around on a big wheel, sort of. I don't know what that is. Um, but they're going up kind of onto the roof and climbing along the ceiling, and there's just so much being done in this scene using the environment to keep it interesting. But you're also getting great dialogue. You're learning more about these characters. You're establishing relationships between these characters. And that way the action doesn't get boring and the dialogue doesn't get boring either, because you're always compensating with one. You're always compensating for action that would get boring with great dialogue. You're compensating for kind of expository dialogue with great action. Such as when Will says that he practices 3 hours a day, and I love the quote from Jack saying, "You gotta find yourself a girl, mate," which obviously hits very close to home for Will. And I absolutely love how it ends as well. Again, just constantly building this relationship between these characters. You cheated, pirate! Then later on, when it's kind of evening and Jack has been taken to prison because he's gotten caught, and Elizabeth is in bed and she's having a conversation with her maid, I guess. And they're kind of talking, and the maid is like, "That must have been a real kind of rough day for you, huh?" And she's like, "Yeah, I don't know what to expect of Norrington's proposal." Well, I was talking about getting threatened by the pirate, but okay. What I love about that scene is that Elizabeth is more bothered by being proposed to by Norrington than she is by being threatened by a pirate. Being threatened by a pirate feels kind of good for her. She really enjoys the thrill of going through that. What's really bothering her is the fact that Norrington has proposed to her and put this pressure on her. Because she doesn't want to be with Norrington, but she knows that she's expected to, and so she doesn't really know what to do. Being threatened by a pirate was exhilarating for her, so she's completely unbothered by it. Then, of course, following that, we get a great action scene as the crew of the Black Pearl are invading Port Royal. And, we're getting some good action here. Will and, great chase with kind of Elizabeth, and we get the start of the "Hello, Poppy." I absolutely love those two characters. I can't remember their names or the actors' names. I know that the thin one with the missing eye is Gareth from the UK office, which is absolutely fantastic. I love that. Those two are hilarious throughout the entire trilogy. And I love the little chase with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth gets captured and Will is trying to fight them off, and he's trying to rescue Elizabeth and all that, and Jack is in prison. And again, there's just so much great world building and character building here, like when the other prisoners are talking about how, "Oh, I heard stories that there was no survivors. If there were no survivors, then where do the stories come from?" So many amazing quotes in these movies, especially from Jack, but from other characters as well. And then of course we get the setup for the curse, as one of the crew of the Black Pearl sees Jack, grabs his throat, and you see the moonlight shine through, and Jack says, "So there is a curse." And I just love how that's set up. We're now like, "Oh shit, there's a curse. What's the deal with the curse? What's the curse about? Why is he a skeleton?" Again, it's just, this world building is excellent. It's not like we're getting an action scene and then just an expository dialogue scene later, which we're kind of getting, but the fact that the world building and the exposition is being peppered throughout these action scenes as well, and these chase sequences, is perfect. It's such great storytelling. It's such great pacing. We now have the setup that there's a curse. So we've had the Black Pearl set up in a hilarious scene earlier, so that's one part of the title. And now we have the setup of the curse. It has something to do with the fact that the crew are skeletons in the moonlight. So we have that set up now. So both parts of the title fulfilled in like 20 minutes. It's amazing. Fast forwarding a little bit to when Elizabeth is on the ship, the Black Pearl, and we finally meet one of the best villains in cinema, one of the best characters throughout this entire franchise, Captain Barbossa. If you want to picture a pirate in your head, like when I was picturing a pirate in my head when I was like 5 years old, it was Barbossa. It was that voice, it was that face with the long beard, it was that kind of big hat, it was the long kind of coat and an animal over the shoulder. I always pictured a parrot, but a monkey works too. And just, he is the perfect example of a pirate for me. Like, I think Davy Jones in 2 and 3 is a better villain overall. I think he has a better story. But Barbossa is the very, like, typical, perfect example of a pirate. Barbossa, I think, is maybe second to Jack Sparrow in terms of having memorable quotes in this franchise. Like, I love when Elizabeth is kind of talking in her like upper class kind of a manner to Barbossa, and Barbossa says, "Well, there are a lot of big words there, but we are more humble pirates," or something like that. I've fucked up that quote entirely, but you know what I mean. And then what I love is later he says, "I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request." Because I just love the idea of him saying that the big words aren't really like scaring him, and then he fires big words back at her to sort of make her a little more uneasy. This is such a great villain, such a great introduction for a villain. Following on from that, we get Jack and Will teaming up, and we get so much great character building here as well between Jack and Will. And they're talking, and Will finds out that he's the son of a pirate. He doesn't want to believe it, but Jack is like, believe it. And there's just so much great character building going on here between Jack and Will, especially for Will. We get more character building with Jack later on, especially in scenes with Elizabeth, but this is definitely very much Will and Elizabeth's film. So now we see Tortuga, which is a great location. It's a great kind of series of sets. This world feels really lived in. There's always kind of something interesting going on in the background while our characters are moving through it. We get a bit more of a setup for the type of person that Jack is. He gets kind of smacked around by women that he has betrayed in the past. And we get an introduction to one of the greatest characters in this franchise. I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot, but it's true. Gibbs. I love Gibbs. Gibbs is absolutely hilarious, and even his setup in this movie, like sleeping in the pig trough. I know that we saw him as like a privateer back in the opening scene, but I love that we see where he is now as well, and it's so good. Gibbs is like, he's just the ultimate bro of these movies. Like, he's always just there for Jack. He's always rallying behind Jack. Back to scenes with Barbossa and Elizabeth. The scene where they're having dinner together. Now, there's a lot of exposition coming in this scene, but I think that the performances of this scene really sell the exposition and make it not boring. Like, for one thing, before any real exposition about what the curse is or what it does is said, we see Elizabeth eating because she's obviously starving, and you get shots of Barbossa watching her eat and just seeing the longing in his face. We don't really know at this point in the film why, but we just see him look at Elizabeth eating, and he just has this like somber sense of want. And if you're watching this for the first time, you'd think that maybe he, is attracted to Elizabeth or whatever, but he's not. He sees the feeling that Elizabeth is getting from eating and finally quenching her thirst and not being hungry anymore, and he can never have that, or he hasn't had that for like a decade. Barbossa, he really longs for that feeling that Elizabeth is getting right in front of him. Following that, we get some exposition about what the curse is and what it's doing. We kind of don't know if it's true or not. Well, the audience knows, but the characters don't. or at least Elizabeth doesn't. And then we get the skeletons in the moonlight. And this film came out in 2003. This was 20 years ago. Tell you what. Here is an image of Barbossa as the skeletons in a 2003 Pirates of the Caribbean film. And here's an image from a film that came out in 2023. Yeah. They really don't make blockbusters like they used to, do they? In all seriousness, the CGI for the skeletons is groundbreaking. It's absolutely incredible. I know that it's a little dated now, but holy shit, it still looks amazing. The detail that's in it is absolutely incredible. Like, yeah, you can tell it's CGI, and there's way better CGI in the following films, but this is really groundbreaking for the time. Like, that is insane. So we'll jump ahead a little bit to when Jack and Will are infiltrating the Isla Muerta, I think it's called. I'll fact check that and put it down here if I'm wrong. But they go to the island where the Aztec gold is hidden, and I love the quote from Jack where he says that not all treasure is silver and gold. Because I think that is kind of the main theme of this film. Especially in a film that's concerning pirates, where the public perception of pirates is that they pillage and plunder and all they care about is riches and gold and material stuff. But this film kind of takes down that notion, which, look, it was probably true that a lot of pirates back then, all they did care about was silver and gold and women and food and all that sort of thing. But I love the idea that in these films where the pirates are kind of meant to be the heroes, they don't really look for silver and gold anymore. That doesn't appeal to them anymore because they've seen what that does to them. And even pirates in these films that do want the treasures, they don't want them for the same reason. Following that, Will and Elizabeth are rescued and Jack is captured. And there is a scene between Will and Elizabeth growing closer as they have conversations, and the romance is kind of really being sparked between them, contrasted directly with a scene between Jack and Barbossa as enemies. I really like that kind of symmetry of those scenes being put together. So then there's a big action scene on the Black Pearl and, stop blowing owls at my ship and all that kind of thing. And, there's a lot of great action there. Not so much in the character building, so there's not really much I can say on it. The action across these first three films is absolutely excellent. The sword fights, the big kind of group fights, it's really, really good. It's never boring. The music and the camera moves and the whimsical characters all make it really exciting, these action scenes. And not every action scene needs to tell you something about these characters. A lot of them do, but this one largely is just to add a bit of fun to, keep you interested, so it's not just dialogue scene after dialogue scene. I want to jump ahead to the scene on the island between Jack and Elizabeth, because, as I mentioned earlier, the main theme of this film, I think, really is that not all treasure is silver and gold. And you see that between Will and Elizabeth, because all Will wants is to love and be loved, specifically by Elizabeth, and to be a good man and to fight for her. And all Elizabeth wants is to be herself and to be who she truly is and outwardly be who she wants to be, whether that is with Will or not. And what Barbossa really wants in this film, what he wanted before was silver, gold, which then he could spend on food and booze and women and all this sort of frivolous stuff. And then when the curse takes that away from him, he realizes that what he wants more than anything else really is to live, because he's not alive or dead in this state that the curse has put him in. He can't feel anything. He can't satisfy his hunger with food. He can't quench his thirst with drink. He can't feel love or warmth or anything like that. So what he wants more than anything at this stage is to feel, and not necessarily to get lots of money and pillage and plunder and spend money on frivolous things, but he just wants to be alive again. And then we're getting on to Jack, and up until now we've gotten hints at the type of person that Jack is, and we've gotten some somewhat serious moments with him, but this scene on the island is Jack's first and one of his best scenes in the whole franchise as a real person. And we learn in this scene what Jack wants more than anything else at this point in his life is freedom. He doesn't want to be controlled by anybody. He doesn't want to be controlled by a curse or any person or anything like that. That's why he always goes around announcing himself as Captain Jack Sparrow, because he needs to be on top. He doesn't want to be controlled by anybody. Jack wants to be free to do whatever he wants. That could be saving Elizabeth's life. It could be just running around having a drink in Tortuga and having sex with prostitutes, whatever floats his boat in the 18th century. And maybe some days that is just being a pirate and pillaging and plundering. But throughout, I think, all of these films, but specifically the first three and in this film as well, what he wants more than anything else is to just be free to do what he wants and get what he wants. Another thing that we learn about Jack's character in this film, and specifically in this scene on the island, it's kind of built up in this film that Jack is the type of person that is able to get himself out of any situation. He can talk himself out of any scenario. He can fight his way out if he needs to. Like, he is genuinely really good at what he does, and we get that a lot in scenes in this film, but also in the story, that he was left stranded on an island with nothing but a bullet with one shot in it, and he escaped. And, you know, it's told that he lashed together sea turtles and made a raft and was able to make his way back to safety. But the truth is, and the truth of Jack throughout all of these movies, is that he is just the luckiest bastard to ever walk the earth. Jack is just unbelievably lucky, and he's so insane that he just is able to get himself out of these situations. Spoilers for the third movie, jump ahead to this time code if you don't want to know, but there's a quote in the third film where the Beckett says, "You're mad," and Jack says, "Thank God for that, because otherwise this would probably never work." It's that kind of stuff that makes Jack the character that he is. He's just lucky. Getting into the third act here, after Jack and Elizabeth have escaped, and, you know, why is the rum gone and all that sort of thing. We get the climax where there's just a lot of great action going on. We've got the big kind of action between the crew of the Black Pearl and the army of Governor Beckett, or not Governor Beckett, Commodore Norrington. And we get the great action scenes between Jack and Barbossa. Jack curses himself so that Barbossa can't kill him. And we have Will and Elizabeth, who are also in this fight. And Will and Elizabeth are really starting to come together as one to fight together. And one thing about all these first three films, even with like CGI characters like Jack and Barbossa as skeletons in this, and beyond all of that as well, the action feels real. It feels dangerous. It feels like these people are really in these situations. It feels like Will and Elizabeth are actually fighting with swords, and even when Jack and Barbossa are CGI skeletons, you really feel the action more so than in a lot of films today, where it's very obviously kind of performances and CGI enhancements and all that sort of thing. the action in this feels real, even when it isn't. And that's just such a credit to Verbinski on this film. The ending then for Barbossa, for now, is the line when Will cuts himself, drops the thing, breaks the curse, and Jack shoots him. And I just love the line from Barbossa when he says, "I feel cold." Because there's just so much going on with Geoffrey Rush's performance in that just one, like, 5-second shot. Because when he sees the blood and he starts to feel, he's kind of happy and relieved at first to realize that he's finally feeling something. But then he realizes that what he's feeling is death. So that's when he says cold, and then he realizes, oh, I'm actually dying. And it's so, so good. This film is just got such great writing, performances, direction, acting. Performances and acting are the same thing. It's just all great. It's all so, so good. This film is 10 out of 10. Then in our final kind of scene when Jack is about to be hanged and he's saved by Will, and we get that conversation between Jack, Will, Elizabeth, and Norrington at the very end, when they're kind of talking about what's really right and wrong here, and good and bad, like what's the distinction there really. And you know, Orlando Bloom is dressed up like Puss in Boots, and it's great. I love kind of this scene caps off the kind of arcs for all these characters, like when Will calls Elizabeth instead of calling her Miss Swan, which is discussed in the beginning of the film. And the kind of finalization of Will's arc as well, when Elizabeth says that he's a pirate because he's finally accepting his roots, and he realizes that there's no distinction between pirates and good people, that pirates can be good people. Again, pirates, this is a very fictionalized idea of pirates, so when I say that pirates can be good people, I'm talking specifically in relation to this series of films, not in relation to real life, because a lot of them were way worse people than they are in these movies. If you could level one criticism against Pirates of the Caribbean, it is probably that they really Disneyfy the idea of pirates to make them appealing to kids, which is understandable. And then just the final shot and the final line when Jack is back on the Black Pearl, that it just gets me so pumped up every time I watch it. When Jack looks at his compass and the final line is "Drink up me hearties, yo ho." It's so good. It, you know, that music kicks in as the credits roll and you're just so fucking pumped watching it. It's amazing. I absolutely love this movie and the other two movies in this trilogy. Yes, I said trilogy. I want to end this review with just some overall thoughts on specific things that I found to be really good throughout this film, and as well the specific characters in this film and their journeys throughout. So starting off with Barbossa as a character, it's absolutely excellent. Geoffrey Rush puts in an excellent performance. Again, as I said, Geoffrey Rush's performance as Barbossa is just the perfect example of a pirate, in my mind anyway. And I love his journey through this film, that he started out greedy, and he started out as this kind of bad person, and then he is punished very dearly for his actions, and he realizes then that the one thing he wants more than riches and gold is the ability to actually enjoy it, and to feel the touch of a woman, and to be able to enjoy food and drink. That's more important than any kind of gold he could steal. So on to Will Turner as a character. He starts out as this straight man who's completely unshakable, and he must abide by the law and do the right thing 100% of the time, even if it's to the detriment of his happiness. And what he realizes throughout the film is that he can't really be like that. He has to be able to break the rules and be more like his father, the pirate, in order to get what he really wants and in order to kind of do what's right for himself and for Elizabeth. I think Will is a really great secondary protagonist to these three films. His journey throughout them, starting out as a straight man who will not, starting out as this straight man who will absolutely not entertain the idea of being a pirate in any way, and going through this film ending as someone who's willing to break the rules, and then in the subsequent films we see more of that journey. It is absolutely fantastic. It's such a great journey for this character. The protagonist of these first three films, Elizabeth Swann, she begins as a woman crippled by societal expectations and completely unable to live the life that she wants to live because of the people around her. And she just longs for the freedom that the pirate's life can give her. And what I love then about her arc, she stands with Jack and Will against Norrington, and that acts as a symbol as she has taken back her agency as a woman who wants to live the pirate's life, who wants the freedom that that can give her. Jack Sparrow is an endless, bottomless pit of charisma and confidence. Jack is the type of man, his introduction says it all, with his ship sinking but him still acting as confident as possible while that's happening to him. It's absolutely excellent, and you learn so much about him as a character emotionally as well throughout the first three films, and especially in this one, as a man who longs for, more than anything else, freedom to do what he wants to do and live on his own terms. The last thing I kind of want to say about this film that is just in every scene is the music. This is some of the best music ever composed for a film. Klaus Badelt in this first film and Hans Zimmer throughout the entire series have crafted a musical score that when you think of pirates, this is the music that you think of. That music, you just know it instantly when you hear it. You hear it in your head when you think of a pirate in any capacity. And I think it has influenced music for stories of pirates later on in the media as well. Like, I remember the video game Assassin's Creed Black Flag having a very similar score. Like, it's different, but they sound like they could be from the same franchise. That is how much the music of Pirates of the Caribbean has influenced people. And you will still see memes and internet videos to this day of people riding around in trolleys and kind of just like walking around in a river or whatever, or just acting stupid and putting the Pirates of the Caribbean music over it. And this is just, it's some of the best music ever composed, I think. And the fact that it has been burned into people's memories so much that people who haven't even watched these movies know this music. I think that that is just the power that movie music has. And I think it's just something that really gets ignored a lot when films are being made. There's so many films out there with just nothing scores. There's so many films out there that get sequels and the music is completely different because they didn't care. Even if they had a good score in the first film, by the time the second film comes around, they've completely changed it because they get in a new composer who does their own thing and doesn't pay any respect to the previous film's music. That happens with a lot of films. And I think people just really underestimate the value of music in movies. And Pirates of the Caribbean is a perfect example of what music can do for a film. This movie came out of nowhere. It was a movie that was based on a theme park ride that had like a bare bones story to it. And Gore Verbinski took that concept, crafted a story around it, got in the best cast and crew that he could to build these amazing sets, craft this incredible story, compose this phenomenal music, get together some of the best actors of the early 2000s, Johnny Depp, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Geoffrey Rush, and even more that I just can't think of right now. And they all just came together and crafted a basically perfect 2000s adventure film. And this film has spawned a trilogy that I would consider among the Back to the Future trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Star Wars original trilogy as one of the best trilogies of all time. And a franchise that, amazingly, is still kind of going today. Like, I know that the Pirates films have kind of been killed recently due to, one, people just not really showing up for them anymore, and two, a lot of stuff that's happening around the film that I just don't really want to get into. But every once in a while you hear rumblings of this series of films coming back. And while I think you really just need Verbinski to come back and direct if you're going to make a great Pirates movie again, I think that this original trilogy and this first film, The Curse of the Black Pearl, was just lightning in a bottle. So, those are my thoughts on Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Let me know what you think of these kinds of videos, this kind of structure where I just go in and go through the plot and go through the key moments and kind of give you my thoughts along the way, full spoiler fashion for these kind of classic films, ones that have, you know, kind of had their anniversaries and stuff like that. Let me know what you think of this kind of structure. I'd like to kind of do reviews like this and then the kind of non-spoiler then spoiler reviews for kind of the newer movies and TV shows that are coming out. But this was a lot of fun to make and talk about. My voice is going hoarse and I have another video to record after this one, but we're powering through here. So like the video if you liked it, comment, let me know what you think of this kind of structure of videos, and let me know what you think of Pirates of the Caribbean, and subscribe to see more discussions about movies and reviews for new movies very soon. I probably shouldn't spoil Dead Man's Chest, should I? Shit. Fuck, the camera's running out of battery. No.